Good evening. Nice to be back. Someone asked me, by the way, a question at the end of Shiur on Tuesday, and I was exhausted, so I wasn't able to give it the energy it deserved. And I can't remember who it was, I was so tired. So last Tuesday, right? Sunday I was on here. So last Tuesday, someone asked me a question at the end of Shiur. If anyone remembers, it was you. I said, if you don't mind asking, I'll have to remind me afterwards. You can ask me now. I couldn't answer it then, but I was my brain was completely shattered. So. Okay, so we'll talk about that. It's fine. I just I had it filed on my way to bring in my mind to think about it when I had some energy, and by the time I had energy, I'd forgotten the question. So. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on either way. I think we dealt well with the Rashba, and Adam pointed out to me, I think just as I was finishing, that the Ritva was considerably clearer than the Rashba to read. So I would humbly suggest everyone to have a look at the Ritva, who really actually was a Talmud of the Rashba and effectively said the same answers as the Rashba, and just with greater expansion and greater clarity. So I'll leave that to everyone to do. Okay, so the Gemara goes on. So basically, the Gemara has asked a question on at the bottom of Kuf Chaf Gimel on the base from Meducha, and to summarize the last year without going through the whole Cheshbon again, the Brisa says that Meducha ein metalton enoisa, and according to Abaya, that means at least you can explain that to mean ein metalton enoisa l'sorech mekoma. According to Rava, what's ein metalton enoisa? Because it's mutter b'sorech kufa l'sorech mekoma. Answers the Gemara ein metalton enoisa mechama l'tel. That's the structure of the sugya. And what the Rishonim really are bothered by is that just like Rava has to come on to saying ein metalton, it means one type of tiltul is prohibited. Even Abaya agrees with that you have to. All it means is one type of metalton is prohibited, and that's what the various answers are given to that question. And the bigger issue floating around is to what degree the Gemara here is ignoring the Gemara earlier that said that possibly said this was going like Nechemia, and that in turn, as the Ritva points out, really gets to the Gezeiras earlier in that sugya where the Gemara was saying that Ali is going like Nechemia or even Meducha. That's really the summary of the sugya. So basically, two problems on the Gemara. One is, does our Gemara fit with the earlier Gemara that is Mokim this Brisa, perhaps like Nechemia? And a second question, Rava's Abaya is asking this big knockout blow against Rava. What does ein metalton know? But even according to him, ein metalton just means one. In some respects, it's Muktza, in other respects not, and therefore in what ways is he much better than Rava? That's really a summary of the last year. Then we're going to ask Eifrei, V'shovin shim kotzav of basa she'asa l'taltalei. And again, the Gemara answers, Rava answers achnami mechama d'tel, so the same shaklataya. So here, it's also difficult because in the earlier sugya, the Gemara answered that it is that it's Muktza machmas l'soron kiss. Right, that was the Gemara's or it's a miyachin nomakom at least, and that's what the Gemara said earlier. And here the Gemara seems to be assuming it's a klish melachot l'issa, and therefore asks its question. So again, this sugya doesn't fit with the earlier sugya. I got mixed up before. Sorry, in Ali, the Gemara says it's klish melachot, it's chaburah makom, yachin makom, and effectively what we call klish melachot, Muktza machmas l'soron kiss. In Meducha, it depends on the Gezeiras. The Ritva points out whether Meducha is also Muktza machmas l'soron kiss. I'm sorry, but either way, Ali certainly is Muktza machmas l'soron kiss. That's what the Gemara said earlier, and yet here the Gemara ignores, seems to be going with klish melachot l'issa. So again, there's no answer to these questions. What you have is a stum brisa. The Gemara earlier, for whatever reason, limits the brisa, which seems to say that Ali is Asa, and makes an akimta that or explains the scenario as only Muktza machmas l'soron kiss, and our Gemara is ignoring that scenario and just taking the brisa on face value of klish melachot l'issa. There's no yeshuvim to these questions. It's the sugyas don't fit. The sugyas are re-looking afresh at the brisa without taking on the assumption of the previous sugya. There's no resolution, as it were, to this problem, and then an answer to the problem. What that does mean is that our Gemara is left with the question really of the earlier Gemara, because the earlier Gemara asked why would Beis Shammai usher it, and the Gemara answers because it's Muktza machmas l'soron kiss. The Gemara here is ignoring that question and just assuming this is a simple or Abaya, at least when he's asking on Rava, is ignoring that question and assuming this is a simple klish melachot l'issa as opposed to Muktza machmas l'soron kiss. and therefore Abai attacks Rava with his price, and Rava answers Michama Latel. Just to explain this a bit better, what's going on, what we're understanding here is that in the base of Medrash, not every brisa was thrashed out fully when a debate was engaged in. So it's true that we know from the earlier Gemara that if you trash out this brisa fully and try and understand Beis Shammai, you'll have to come to the conclusion that it's Muktza Machmas is. But when Abai was asking questions to Rava, he was just taking the brisa on face value. That's the Klishman after this, and was therefore asking why in Metalton in Osa. That's this Gemara reveals to us a bit about Siddur HaGemara, of how Gemara is structured, and how the conversations in the bottom Medrash took place, in which not every eventual conclusion in a brisa was obvious to all the protagonists at every stage in it. So when Abaya asks Rav on the brisa, he's just assuming this is a simple Klishman after this. It doesn't occur to him that it's a Muktza Machmas. That's what you have to say in the Gemara. That's what comes out. Is everyone with me in this? Is this clear?
Can you say that the third answer of the last one was the question?
Yeah. So either it wasn't a question where I was just cutting and pasting, or when he asked it, it wasn't. The brisa wasn't yet fully resolved in other respects. So it's eventually we'll realize that for other reasons we have to say that this is a Saran Kiss. But when Rava and Abai were engaging in this conversation, they were treating it as a regular Klishma after Nisa. You see that's acceptable in Derech Halimud of Gemara. That's not called a stew or something. Okay. Yeah.
It's more like that because it's followed on this. We haven't discussed within our order. We've discussed after Issa. That's been the historical analysis. Therefore, we're still focusing on just Hetters and Issas and not.
Maybe I don't know. I mean, in mathematically, what you're saying is correct. Rav and Abaya conversation in this brisa takes place before they've worked out Hilchas Chesaron Kiss. The problem is there's a gaping hole, because then how are they going to explain Beis Shammai? They haven't resolved that. So they had some other answer. No, they're always showing that give other answers to this question. You could say other things. So assuming some other answer to the to the question. I mean, for example, what do we know about what Beis Shammai holds about Kli Shema Issa? Maybe Beis Shammai holds that Kli Shema Issa is also the Kufay. There are other potential things you could do rather than saying it's Chesaron Kiss here. Just mathematically, when we establish, in order to explain a Beis Shammai, the Gemara earlier says that this is Chesaron Kiss. You could say Beis Shammai takes a different stance. Beis Shammai is machmir. Beis Shammai held that every Kli Shema Issa is also you could give other mathematical answers to the question. Either way, our Gemara is ignoring that Gemara there. It hasn't yet resolved the issue of Chesaron Kiss. It's assuming that's a simple Kli Shema Issa, and based on that, Abai asks the question of Rava. That's what comes out. Okay. Omar, let's move on. Omar, did everyone manage to go through the Gemara and some of the sources that just we went over? Okay. So all we're really going to try and do until we take we have next Sunday.
Sunday, then the following.
And then following Sunday. Okay, so we'll just try and finish off the Sukkah in the next two shiurim that we've left of this term before Bein Hazmanim of the bank holiday season. Omer Belaza, Konin Umakolos, Glustra Maducha, Konin Kodim Ataras Kelim Nishnu, Konin Detanan. Sorry, yeah, Konin Detanan. Lo Sita Konin V'lo Netzilas Santoche Esa Shabbos. So I don't want to go too far off topic here, but basically the Brisa says that you can't arrange the Lachem Haponim using these konin on Shabbos, and the Gemara says the only way to understand this is that this is before this is in the time when the Gezeiras of Nechemia still existed on Stam Kelim. That's the Maskan of the Gemara. Now Rashi in the Gemara in Menachos, there's a sort of semi parallel sugya there. Rashi there says, he asks a question: why doesn't the principle of Ein Shavus b'Mikdash? And Rashi answers, this isn't a regular Rishus, because it's Mechsi Kabona V'Seisa. So there is a klal, at least perhaps a klal, that in Shavuos b'Mikdash, that in the Mikdash they didn't make a certain type, a Shavuos type Gezeira. So Rashi says, why should you not be able to move these konin on Shabbos, in Shavuos b'Mikdash? And he says, because this is not a regular Shavuos, this is because of Mechsi, Kabona, and Sosa. So Rashi seems to be understanding that Shavuos is a a resting type drabonon on Shabbos, and this Gezeiras, says Rashi, is not a resting type Gezeira on Shabbos or a regular Muktza type Gezeira. It's a Gezeira because it looks like bone and sois of Kelim, and therefore it's also that's shot in Rashi. Everyone see this. So without going into too many details, there's a lot of ink spilt on this Rashi because a Tosfos Rezi, I think I printed Tosfos Rezi asks, it doesn't seem to fit our sugya. Our sugya seems to say that the reason is because of Gezeiras, Kelim, and Nechemia, and the Gemara there says that the reason is because of, and Rashi there says the reason is because of the Shavuos of Otu, Boin, and Soisa.
What is the question of Gemara? Thank you.
Yes. I'm saying. In other words, if the Issa is a Drabonon Issa, then I understand why it's not Doicha Shabbos. Sorry, start again. If the Chiyuv of, the other way around, if the Chiyuv of Siddur Akonim is a Chiyuv Deraisa as part of the Avodah, then that should be Doicha Shabbos. Whereas if it's Drabanon, then I understand it's not Doicha Shabbos. Asks Rashi, why do you need, even if it's only an Issa Drabanon, surely Ein Shavuos B'Mikdash? Answers Rashi that Tiltul is Gezeira of Boina and Soisa. That's the further. No, Rashi's going the other way around. If it's a deraisa, then it certainly should be Doicha Shabbos. Whereas if it's not part of the Avodah, then I understand why it's not Doicha Shabbos. Asked Rashi, how does the whole thing begin? Surely Ein Shavuos B'Mikdash. Therefore, what Dichri Shabbos is there? I mean, what melachot does moving konim involve? It doesn't involve any Yisrorim at all. The answer is it involves the Drabanon. Which Drabanon? Shavuos Ein Shavuos B'Mikdash. The answer is no, it's a Gezeira Atu Boina and Soisa. So the Rashi remains a little unclear, and there's a lot of discussion around this. The Rambam we're not yet up to the Rambam. The Rambam on Makolos says Chal Abba Osol Yos B'Shabbos K'Masei L'Chol Kach Masei B'Shabbos. Why? Because Issa Shavuos B'Mikdash Hatahu. So the next Gemara, which talks about these Makolos that they used to skin the Korban Pesach on a regular year, and on Erev Pesach Chal Yos B'Shabbos, did they or didn't they use it? So the Rambam paskins that they did use it on Shabbos because Ein Shavuos B'Mikdash. So the Rambam seems willing at least to learn that brisa is Shaloch Halacha because Ein Shavuos B'Mikdash. We'll get that to the Rambam later, whether the Rambam learns that into the Gemara or not. But either way, that's just something else floating around the sukkah. Even if there is an Issa Drabanon, why should this Issa Muktza trump Hilchas Mikdash when Ein Shavuos Mikdash? That's just some background for you. Yeah.
Be more than just the Drabanon? Is there in like a halfway house? Almost between the Drabanon and Doraita,
L'chora not. L'chora is a Drabanon, but it's a Gezeira as opposed to Shavuos. That's what seems to be the B'shat. Yeah. That's hopefully the case.
Discussing Lilith, it seems that you can have a Gezeira that's to preserve the Kedusha of Shabbat that would override even a Doraita mitzvah. So perhaps the Gezeira of Nechemia is exactly that. It's a special Gezeira to preserve the Kedusha of Shabbat, and therefore even in the Mikdash it could apply.
You could have said such an answer, and there are those that say that Nechemia or Muktza is a more chomo type Drabanon, and therefore we don't say Ein Shavuos B'Mikdash. The Rashi doesn't say that, and the Rambam doesn't say that. Because the Rambam paskins that Makolos we're not bothered by because Ein Shavuos B'Mikdash. So okay, that may be in the post-Nechemia world, but it's still Muktza and nonetheless the Rambam ignores that. And Rashi here seems to be saying that regular Shavuos isn't enough, it's only because of the Gezeira or to Bain and Sosa. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm not reading that about melachot, and Rabbi Zobin saying about on Shabbos they would use their shoulders that have these shoulders instead. Is the Rambam reading that on melachot? I can't remember the other ones. Like, what do you think? What's not that right?
I don't know. It didn't occur to me. I thought he was just not asking about the Brisa, because the Brisa says, I hear your point. The Brisa says, which bepashtus means on chol, and Rabbi Zobin, so you don't see a machlokus in the Gemara, in the Brisa, and therefore the Rambam seems to be paskening against this Brisa based on Ein Shavuos B'Mikdash. You're suggesting maybe this is the Darsi Chita of Rabbi Lazar, and the Rambam saying, but there's a Tanakama who argues even though it's not Mefurish, there's such a thing. Could be. It's a good point. It's a fair point. I don't know anything about it. Yeah, everyone hear this point. Yeah, I mean, we're not really up to Makolas, but I mentioned it because the Rambam ignores the Brisa. I said he ignores the Brisa, and he says the Brisa is holding Yeshiva-style Mikdash, but we pass an Ein Shavuos Mikdash, and therefore the Brisa is Shalok Halacha. Possibly the suggestion is that Rabbi Lezer is a yochid who's saying that on Shabbos they did things differently, and the Rambam is being the daik that everyone else holds on Shabbos they didn't do things differently because Ein Shavuos Mikdash maybe. Yeah, could be.
Then Rob was going to say there's a view to be
right. So the Rambam presumably is going to Halacha, and in which this is a regular din Muktza, not a din of Nechemia, and nonetheless the Rambam ignores the Brisa because Ein Shavuos Mikdash. So let's say Rashi in Menachos is going in the Maskon of the Gemara. So it's a din of Muktza, not a din of Nechemia. Rashi says because of Gezeira, Bain and Sosa. Our Gemara says because of Muktza or Nechemia. So it remains a little bit unclear. Yeah. Okay. I also printed again. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I printed Tosus in Sukkah, just because I don't know. In hindsight, maybe it's too off subject or not. But basically, Tosus says that a lulav has Muktza. The question is why can't a lulav be moved on Sukkot on first day on Sukkot in order to shake? And on the rest of Sukkot, I'm sorry, why can't it move shake? So the eventual answer to the Gemara is something we're very familiar with because it's Tkiyas Shofar on first day Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, because of the special Gezeira that we're worried that people end up carrying it on Shabbos. In the earlier stage of the Gemara thought it was because of a Muktza din, and Tosus asks on that, he says, why is it a lot of Muktza? It's Chazi L'Mitzah. And his answer seems to be because it's not a Keli at all, and then he compares it to Konim, and he seems to be saying that Konim are not a Keli at all. Our Gemara seems to say that Konim are Kelim, but they're Gezeiras Nechemia. Tosus seems to learn that Konim are not Kelim at all, and therefore it's comparable to a lulav. It's an interesting thing. A lulav, Tosus seems to be saying a lulav is not a Keli, and therefore it falls between the gaps, right? It ends up as Muktza on Yom Tov, because even though it has a use, so it's Muktza, but nonetheless it's not a Keli, and therefore it ends up Muktza on Yom Tov. That seems, on Shabbos at least, that seems to be what Tosus is saying.
There seems to be a distinction between something which is a Keli, something which has got Torah Keli. So we see in the last Maharashah making this distinction between about the Yom Tov. In one case, it is either you have this which is Keli, but it's not.
Well, let's put the Marsha on hold. We'll get to it shortly. But for now, Tosus says that a lulav is an interesting thing. A lulav is not a kli. In other words, it's not. I've defined a kli often. A kli is mankind's servant, right? That's the whole object of a kli. It's a utensil. It's dedicated to facilitating us doing our stuff. A lulav is not a kli. It's just a branch, a tree branch, and it's allowed to the and it's a tzorech mitzvah. And Tosfos seems to be saying that even though it's chazin mitzvah, it's shaykh bei issa muktzah because it's not osikli. It's an interesting concept.
When you have the when you take the
Just 1 second, Josh. Adam's asking live, and then I'll come to you in a second. Yeah.
Use it for a mitzvah in a sense. It does take on the status of maybe use them up on food in some sense.
There's a separate set of halachas which we're not going to go into now, which is it could be that dedicating something to a mitzvah purpose makes it muktzah with respect to other uses because it's hooked to the mitzvah. But we're not. That's a separate set of halachas. We're and not necessarily regular to muktzah at all.
Because it's not a kli, it's more like, as you say.
This halacha, this is the source of this halacha. Yeah, if you're saying because it's mitzvah itself being a reason for muktzah, that's a separate halacha of muktzah mitzvah. So here Tosfos isn't saying that the mitzvah is a reason for muktzah. He says it's not enough to redeem it from muktzah status because it's a non-kli. Kelim, you can begin talking about, are they omed for my use or not? Is mitzvah called a use or not? A non-keli is not omed for human use. It's just it's its own thing. It's just an object. As I said, I hesitated in bringing the Tosfos. It's a bit off subject. They brought out an interesting story of we're trying to learn Muktza, which is about kelim which are made for use. Tosfos seems to say the lulav is not a keli, and he seems to compare it to konim, which is difficult, right? Because konim, the Gemara says, is a keli, nonetheless, is in Gezeiras Nechemia. Sorry, Josh, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, it might be on the same line, so it might be worth parking. But I was just going to ask about if you have an Evan and you designate it as a doorstop, then that becomes a kli, right? Is that not right? So why not?
Yeah.
Why not with the lulav? I know I'm going to use this lulav before Yom Tov, so is it not a kli?
So using it for the mitzvah isn't enough to make it into a kli, but it's not a reason for muktzah, and therefore it remains a non-kli, which is only for use, and nonetheless that would be muktzah. Yeah, that's what comes out. An interesting thing. So it seems to be considering the possibility that konim also not a kli, because they're non-klis to a mitzvah. Interesting thing. I was trying to work out whether that fits like the maskon of the Gemara, but it doesn't seem to work. The Gemara seems to assume it is a kli. So either way, just be aware that a non-kli is deeper than muktzah. It's not omed for human use at all because it's not a kli. That's what comes out. Okay, my collars disnan. My collars daken. So we saw already the Rambam, I'm not going to go back to that, who says that this price is shalok halacha, because this price is assuming shivus b'mikdash, and we paskin ein shivus b'mikdash. The Gemara answers that it's osa, that no, it's not because of Gezeiras Nechemia. Really, Gezeiras Nechemia was unraveled, and la'acha shahuta nishnes. This price is going in the maskana, and that which it's muta, that which it's osa, is because you can avoid using it, and since you can avoid using it, therefore there's no heta. You've got a way of avoiding using it because you have this eights of not using makolos, of just putting hands out. That's the Gemara's answer. So the Shartzion brings an important chiddush halacha l'maisa into this. He brings from this that anything a kli shemelachta le'issa, and here we see even a kli shemelachta le'heta. If you have a way of a kli shemelachta le'issa, if you have a way of avoiding using it, then we don't call that the tzorech gufay. If you have a workaround, that's not called the tzorech gufay. Quite an important halacha l'maisa. Again, is everyone with me in the matter? Did anyone manage to see the Shartzion or work through it? No, didn't manage to see it yet. Okay, so I'll just summarize it outside. And then we'll relook at it on Sunday. The Gemara asks from Markolis, why can you not hang the carbon Pesach on these sticks on Shabbos Erev Pesach in order to skin the animal? So the Havamin of the Gemara was because of Gezeiras Nechemia. The answer to the Gemara is no. It's really we don't hold with Gezeiras Nechemia, but the reason is because you can avoid using them. And so what if you can avoid using them? They're not muktzah. What's the Gemara's answer? You can avoid using them. The answer is because if you can avoid using them, that's not called tzorech gufay. It comes out chiddush halacha l'maisa that klisha melachot l'issa the tzorech gufay is only mutter when there's no way to avoid using it. But if there is a way to avoid using it, you shouldn't use a klisha melachot l'issa. Thus is medayik the shartzian in our Gemara. Important. It's only Makar. I mean, it's he brings Achronim that say this, but the Makar from this is our Gemara. So this Gemara is an important halacha on the Maisa Gemara. Sorry, yeah.
This idea of this Kelim. Just saying that the way that we understand that these four Mishnayot of right off have been taught. Our reason, all of them, is because of the Gezeiras of Nechemia. That's the initial proposition of the Gemara, and then that's what Rabbi Zobin is trying to suggest, and then it's rejected by Rabbah saying no, we've got other reasons.
No, not necessarily. No, it's Stam Gemara. It's Stam Gemara that's suggesting that all these brises are kodem. Yes. So Rabbi Loz wants to say they're all kodem shenishnes, which is a bit of a doichik, because it turns out that we have a brisa which is historically now irrelevant.
So these are all within the Gezeiras of Nechemia.
These are the Gemara's Havamin. These are all masoros and traditions of halachas that were handed down through the generations, and memories that were collected in brises that are historic but are now out of date. All irrelevant. That's correct. Yes. Yeah. And that's a bit of a doichek that there's halachas that have entered the tradition that are irrelevant halacha l'maisa, and that Gemara says no, they all of them are negay halacha l'maisa, and they're not prehistoric. Yeah.
Let's go back to the Kelim.
Yeah.
With the Kelim, doesn't the Gemara conclude that we don't move into Shabbat because we don't need to, because the lechem not going to go miyafesh in that very small period of time?
Yes.
In that situation of a klisha melachot l'heta, which you don't move at all. Or maybe not.
Well, let's go with the pashtus Gemara klisha melachot l'heta. Yeah.
So you actually got a situation of klisha melachot l'heta, which if you don't need to move at
Correct.
all, this is like
Correct. Yes, that's exactly right. Yes, and that's sort of the point the Shartzian's making. Yeah, and the same with Makolos. Yeah. Okay. So stop here, and we'll carry on Sunday.
There you go.